Over 4 tons. No engine.
No armor.
You would think that in an era dominated by artificial intelligence and swarms of kamikaze drones, a weapon like this would never see the battlefield again. The M777 howitzer is a massive, heavy, and old-fashioned piece of towed artillery. Considering the violent shifts in warfare we've witnessed in the Russia-Ukraine war, it should be entirely useless. This is a conflict that has saturated the skies with advanced optics, thermal imaging, and autonomous weapon systems. In an environment where being seen means being destroyed, how is a massive, easy-to-spot piece of towed artillery surviving, let alone dominating, in a battlefield filled with fast-flying and lethal drones? The answer is a masterclass in boldness, innovation, and cleverness. Ukraine has found a way to take this vulnerable, traditional artillery piece and turn it into a relentless threat. It is a paradox. The ultimate analog weapon thriving in a digital war. But to understand how towed artillery survives in the age of loitering munitions, we first have to look at the anatomy of the weapon itself. We need to look at how it was designed, what it was meant to do, and why it became the undisputed king of the modern battlefield. The M777 is a 155mm towed artillery system. It was primarily designed by the British defense aerospace company BAE Systems, but American defense contractors were heavily involved, manufacturing about 70% of its components. Before arriving in Eastern Europe, the M777 had already built a formidable resume. It was heavily utilized in the war in Afghanistan, the Iraq War, the Syrian Civil War, and the Yemeni Civil War. But the Russo-Ukrainian War is an entirely different beast. It is the largest, most intense test the M777 has ever faced. When you analyze the specifications of the M777, it becomes immediately clear why it is so effective. The secret lies in its metallurgy. The M777 weighs in at roughly 4.2 tons. While that sounds heavy, it is actually a lightweight marvel. It is 41% lighter than its predecessor, the bulky M198, which tipped the scales at a massive 7.15 tons. How did engineers shave off thousands of pounds? Titanium. The design of the M777 incorporates a massive amount of titanium alloys. This drastic weight reduction translates directly to survivability through mobility. The M777 can be rapidly airlifted by medium-lift helicopters like the CH-47 Chinook, or transported by aircraft like the Lockheed C-130 Hercules. On the ground, it can be towed by air-braked tactical vehicles, allowing crews to move it rapidly across muddy or uneven terrain. But its efficiency isn't just about weight. It's about manpower. Traditional artillery systems of this size often require a crew of 9 operators to fully function. In a high-casualty environment, that is a massive vulnerability. The M777, however, is designed with streamlined hydraulics and mechanics. In exigent circumstances, it can be operated with just 3 highly trained crew members. Less manpower required means fewer lives at risk per firing mission. As this war progressed deep into 2024 and beyond, artillery became the undisputed heavy hitter of the conflict. It accounted for roughly 80% of all casualties on both sides. Ukraine was eventually supplied with a variety of highly advanced, self-propelled Western systems. The French Caesar, the American HIMARS, and the M109 Paladin. These systems have engines and armor. Yet, the unarmored, towed M777 remained highly prized among Ukrainian artillery teams. Why? Because it was reliable, incredibly precise, and remarkably easy to maintain in the field. The M777 boasts an operational range of 25 miles, or 40 kilometers, depending on the ammunition used. But it's the guided shell technology that makes it lethal. When firing the M982 Excalibur guided artillery shells, the M777 transforms into a sniper rifle. It can hit a target from 40 kilometers away with a margin of error of just 10 meters. This devastating precision was violently demonstrated in February 2023. Russian forces were making an aggressive, massive push to capture a small, strategically vital town in the Donbass named Vuhledar. The assault was straight out of a Cold War playbook. It involved huge numbers of Russian troops, Wagner Group mercenaries, and a massive mechanized column of T-90 tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers. They attempted to force their way through a geographic choke point. They thought brute force would win the day. But the M777s were waiting. Using US-supplied M718 remote anti-armor mine shells, specialized munitions that scatter anti-tank mines in mid-air over a target area. The M777 crews turned the battlefield into a death trap. They boxed the armored column in, and then picked them off like fish in a barrel. Over 30 heavy Russian weapon systems were destroyed in a terrifyingly short span. But wars are highly dynamic. The enemy always adapts. As time went by, the rules of engagement changed, and the M777 was pushed to the absolute brink of obsolescence. Realizing that mechanized ground assaults were failing, Russia shifted its doctrine. They flooded the airspace. They deployed unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, in quantities never before seen in the history of human warfare. Suddenly, big heavy artillery systems were massive targets waiting to be wiped off the map. Ukraine could no longer position its M777s on a ridgeline and simply blast away at enemy assault groups. The modern battlefield has eyes and ears everywhere. The moment an M777 fires, it creates a massive acoustic signature and a bright muzzle flash. Russian counter-battery radars, like the Zoopark one, instantly calculate the trajectory of the incoming shell and pinpoint the exact location of the Ukrainian gun. Within seconds, drone crews burst into action. Reconnaissance UAVs like the Orlan 10 spot the target, while Lancet loitering munitions and Shahid drones turn the skies into a deadly hunting ground. Because the M777 has zero armor, a single drone hit in the right place, especially near the hydraulic lines or the breech, is enough to permanently destroy the system and kill the crew. Military analysts watched this shift and quickly concluded the M777's time was up. They believed the drone warfare phase would render towed guns worthless. They were wrong. By 2026, Ukrainian artillery teams continue to reap massive benefits from the 777. The 1st Separate Assault Regiment has openly stated that without the 777, with Russian drones controlling the air. It comes down to ruthless, brilliant adaptation. First, they perfected a doctrine known as scoot and shoot. Ukrainian crews have learned to endure the physically grueling process of taking apart the gun, packing the munitions, leaving the firing zone, and relocating, sometimes doing this a dozen times a day. They never stay in one location for more than a few minutes. They get in, fire their mission, and vanish before the Russian drones can get a fix on their position. But physical speed wasn't enough. They had to play mind games. Using wood, scrap metal, and even old sewage pipes, Ukrainian troops began constructing incredibly lifelike M777 decoys. To fool thermal imaging cameras, they added battery-powered heaters disguised to look like a hot gun barrel. They even equipped them with smoke generators to make it look as if the fake gun had just fired a round. The economics of this deception are staggering. A decoy M777 costs around $1,000 to build. A Russian Lancet drone designed to destroy it costs around $50,000. Every time Russia attacks a wooden pipe, Ukraine wins the economic and tactical exchange. Perhaps the most shocking adaptation, however, involved a deliberate regression in technology. When the M777s first arrived in Ukraine, they were fully equipped with modern electronics, digital fire control systems, tablets, and GPS units. But unfortunately for Ukraine, sophisticated Russian electronic warfare units were reverse engineering the digital signatures of these devices to locate. So, faced with annihilation, Ukraine made a radical choice. They ripped the electronics out. The digital systems were stripped, and the M777s went fully analog. By removing the GPS and digital displays, the M777s became virtually invisible to Russian electronic scanning systems. This method is incredibly labor-intensive. It requires the crews to use traditional math, compasses, and large curved rammers to physically insert the heavy projectiles into the breech. To assist with this exhausting physical labor, some elite units have even been seen wearing modern exoskeleton suits to carry the rammers and shells. The maintenance alone is a nightmare. The M777 barrel is only rated to withstand a maximum of 2,500 shots before the rifling wears down and accuracy drops. Since Ukraine does not have an infinite supply of replacement barrels or ammunition, they cannot afford to shoot blindly. They must fire with extreme discipline and strategy. When a gun takes shrapnel hits from Russian Grads or Lancets, Ukrainian mechanics refuse to let the weapon die. They strip parts from completely destroyed units, cannibalizing them to create operational Frankenstein artillery. Factories deep in Ukrainian territory are doing the impossible, making defunct, battered antiques function like brand new weapons. The M777 was designed for counterinsurgency warfare in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan. It was absolutely not designed for the high-intensity. Yet, Ukraine continues to defy the odds. Through sheer willpower, mechanical ingenuity, and tactical deception, they have taken a piece of towed technology and used it to relentlessly bombard and break Russian formations. The M777 was supposed to be a relic of the past, but instead, it has become the anchor of the present. Thanks for watching the Geopolitical Vantage. If you want to continue understanding the weapons, tactics, and strategies that shape our modern world, make sure to subscribe.